Welcome to Cohesive Friendship Unit. My name is Chris. I am here with Brian
What's going on?
and Jake.
Hey guys.
Big news, we have a new Switch that is heavily rumored. Theoretically, probably going to be called something like the Switch Pro. We're going to be spending this whole video talking all about everything we know about the Switch Pro. There's really three big things that we know, and then we're also going to talk about maybe what we would want in a Switch Pro as well. But let's just dive right into it. So right off the bat is a 720p OLED screen. What do we think about a 720p OLED screen?
Not great when you're up close to it.
Do you remember 2006?
I have a 720 TV as my. It's a little bit better, but it's not realistically that much better. And if you're close to a screen like that, you see the screen door. Doesn't matter how big it is. 720 is these days it's noticeable.
Even
Go ahead. I gotta agree with Brian in that this is probably the weirdest sort of upgrade in my opinion, because it's currently a 720p LCD screen for people who have regular Switches. This is one of the ones that I'm kind of hoping is not entirely true. I don't see the point of getting a screen that is the same pixel density but OLED. OLED really gives you better definition between your colors, and Nintendo, due to the limitations of the Switch, doesn't really develop games with graphic styles that it really matters. If you look at Legend of Zelda, it's a lot of bright pastel colors. So
not
LCD
a lot of
versus
pure
OLED,
blacks.
yeah, it's not going to make a difference. You don't get the definition between black and light colors. So I hope this is something that turns into a 1080p OLED screen or a high refresh 720 screen.
Yeah, I actually have a lot of qualms with the screen choice. I can, we can talk about this, but first of all, 720p, even really shitty bargain bin smartphones have at least a 1080p screen. 1080p is pretty much the bare minimum. And I understand that it would be more expensive from a resource standpoint. Just driving a 1080p screen takes more GPU power than a 720p. But I don't know. I feel like we're definitely going to get a better processor based on one of the later points we're going to talk about. So I'm not thrilled about that. And as far as the OLED goes, Jake already made a good point. But on top of that, the something that happens with OLEDs, especially not very good OLEDs, which I'm kind of assuming is what we'll get here, is blue shift, where if you look at it off axis, there's a color tint that changes, and I think that would kind of suck, considering when you're playing this in handheld, you're probably playing in suboptimal conditions. You're probably either playing with a friend or on a bus, hunched over in a weird position, and I think it's just gonna skew the colors, and it's not gonna look great. That's just where I'm at. The only good thing I see about OLED is because you can turn off those black pixels entirely, you can potentially save battery, but I can't imagine it's that great over time.
Well, but at the same time, you got to consider what's being made in terms of parts. Who's really demanding a 720p touchscreen anymore? It must be cheaper to source a 1080 one. So I that's probably what it'll end up being. I'd expect that the OLED would make it worse. The screen door, it would make the pixels stand out more. Right?
Yeah.
If they can be a higher contrast between them and you can only have so many pixels.
It depends on how it depends on if they source a good OLED screen or a bad one. It depends on the pixel range.
But if you're going 720, that kind of says you're going for a bad one.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But I think it'll be 1080 because it's the standard. That's just what people expect, and it's what's being made.
Yeah. I mean, all that being said, though, I do not have that big of a deal with my Switch's screen right now, assuming it's running at full resolution, which we will talk about later. A lot of games do not run at full resolution by a long shot in handheld mode.
Yeah, I would agree. I guess I never really use handheld mode unless I need to. like I'm playing on the go or something, which doesn't happen that often anymore.
I wonder why.
Yeah, but I would agree. I don't have a ton of complaints, and I think this is kind of a weird side grade that's rumored, so I hope it's not 100% accurate, that we get something a little different.
Okay. Well, let's shift slightly to a different direction. Still sticking on the screen, though. It's going to be a slightly bigger screen. It's going to be a 7-inch screen as opposed to the slightly smaller screen. But 7 inches to me is fine. I think the Switch screen as it is not too small until you start doing things with multiplayer. But in general, I don't really see the need. Basically, what a 7-inch screen would be trimming out those bezels, which are kind of ugly. So I think it could look better. I don't need a bigger screen personally, I guess is what I'm saying. I think it works, but I don't know. How do you feel, Jake?
I personally like this better than the OLED rumor. I like the idea of getting rid of those bezels, adding a little bit more real estate to your screen. Because when you are, I mean, look at your phone. That's what they've been doing, is getting rid of the edges. And I think it adds a ton to just the quality of life of using a cell phone. I think it'll be the same with the Switch. Like, why waste all that space with a bezel when you can increase the screen size and get like the borderless that pretty much every phone and monitor has these days?
You liking a bigger screen, Brian? And I guess
I actually like bezels. I think it's a nice, like, philosophical divider between the technological and the real. But that's just me.
And I think we also have to kind of take into account that I'm guessing that they would want the Joy-Con to fit, to be kind of cross-compatible, which I think does limit, just how big you can make this device, assuming you want it to look normal, Does that make sense? Because you want them to, like, slot in the same way. So,
well, I think that if you're making the thing a little bit bigger, then you're making the Joy-Cons a little bit bigger, which helps with the, like, issues, shall we say, with using the Joy-Cons if you have normal size hands.
To be fair, I think the Switch is a decent size as is. I think the issues is the layout of the Joy-Cons.
I agree.
So I would prefer to get rid of the border on the screen and leave the Switch the same size, rather than adding like 1 inch diagonally and making the entire Switch slightly bigger.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's meant to travel at the end of the day. I'm not looking for like a comfortable Xbox controller in my hands. Like, if I'm playing it on the go, I chose that for a reason,
But at the same time, if you're increasing the playability of it by making it a little bit longer, it's still the only console that you can have like a split screen 2-player game on a bus. Nothing else has that. So like anything they do, they kind of gain.
Yeah. Well, leaving the portable side, the next and final kind of big thing that we have is 4K HDR output in docked mode. This, I think, is realistically what's going to be the selling point of the new Switch. HDR, I'm not sold on it because I don't have a good HDR TV, but that really doesn't apply to people unless they have newer TVs. The 4K, though, I think that is a pretty big selling point. If you can, not only 4K, but just the idea that theoretically some of these older games on the Switch that are out now, like Fire Emblem Three Houses and Xenoblade 2, those games that like literally look like garbage at times, will just run a little bit better, and maybe even at a higher resolution look a little bit better. I think that's like the core drive here. And as far as 4K goes, the only thing I have to say is the Nintendo Switch is the only main console that uses NVIDIA. And NVIDIA has this cool technology called DLSS, which uses kind of an AI algorithm to upscale your image on PC. And it works really, really well for the newer graphics cards. And what's interesting about DLSS is they recently unlocked it so that you don't have to go through NVIDIA to turn it on. You can just kind of enable it. There's no blocker to using it anymore. And I think that this could be kind of the Switch Pro secret sauce, is leveraging DLSS. So the thing might not even necessarily be a lot more powerful, but it might be able to use DLSS to run games at a much, much higher resolution without really needing much more power. That's it, or fitting a chip in that footprint.
Yeah, I sincerely hope you're right. This is the one bit that I am most excited for, but also most skeptical of for many reasons. I mean, Nintendo is not known for being able to really hit like graphical fidelity qualities of, I mean, they're like well beyond 5 years behind the curve. They're like a decade behind most consoles and most games when it comes to graphics quality. But in addition to that, I think there's a huge problem with the games they're making. I mean, I'm thinking back to the big first party titles here, and I would love to see Breath of the Wild at 4K, Mario Odyssey, but Fire Emblem, I don't think even 4K could fix that game. And that's one of our favorite games here. That game's just going to look garbage no matter what resolution.
All right, there might be an art style issue with that one, but it could still run a hell of a lot better.
I think part of it's just asset quality and what they can fit on the Switch.
The carts.
Yeah, they still have to manage to fit everything on a cartridge.
Yeah. I actually didn't think about the cartridge. That could be a long-term issue. But I don't know, Brian. What do you think? I mean, it's time, right?
It's odd. I mean, I think I don't own a Switch, so like I've never experienced the playability problems you guys are talking about. But if you're gonna be adding more processing power to keep up with your own games, I would add a little bit better. I think that benefits everybody. But 4K, like, is that really the market you're shooting for with the Switch? Like families and people that want to play your Nintendo games, like Jake said, they're not designed to look good. They're fun to play, but it's not a graphical, earth-shattering experience like pretty much every AAA game tries to bill itself as. Like, 4K, I don't think it really even has the market penetration that most people would care. Like, it's still not hugely support. Like, people have it, but a lot of the target audience for the Switch, I don't think does. And if it comes with your chipset, like, it's a nice add, but it does make your, I don't want to say sins, but like the stuff that you do because you're working at a low resolution, when you go up that next one, it makes all that stuff that much more obvious. So, but I don't think that people, like, if you're playing a Switch on a 4K TV, like, you bought the Switch because you want to play Nintendo games and you really don't care what it looks like.
Yeah. And I think they have to decide, are they, making this a niche product for the older Nintendo crowd that has some disposable income or whatever, or are they making this to replace the original Switch? And I think, the answer to that question heavily kind of affects what you were just talking about, where this, like, the 4K really doesn't matter if they're trying to replace the Switch, just because, this one will be cheaper to make because the older parts aren't worth sourcing anymore, or if this is going to be more like a niche product to make older people happy.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, if it comes with your chipset, you might as well use it.
Yeah.
But, and it seems to be aimed at kind of the higher end of the market because they already have the cheap Switch.
Yes, they do.
So, like, and if this is going to be the quote-unquote pro model, like, you're aiming at pros, you know what I mean? So, like, these are people who are going to have 4K TVs.
Pro gamers only.
Yeah, and to be fair, I personally don't see the draw of purchasing a lot of the, like, PC indie games that have been ported over the Switch, but at this point there's a lot, and those games probably all support 4K at this point. Like, I'm thinking Hollow Knight and a bunch of other games like that are aesthetically beautiful and could support the higher processing power, graphical output, all that stuff. So maybe that's what they're targeting, but personally, I don't see that as a big market, but I know it's there.
All right, I got 2 more things to talk about. The first one is, what do you guys maybe want in a Switch Pro, if anything? If you don't, that's fine. I am thinking this one is a super dumb want and a super dumb ask, but I really wish that they would put in 2 cart slots and you could put 2 games in the Switch. That's something that they do in digital cameras, SLRs, digital SLRs. And I don't know. I just know that it is truly a pain in the ass, and this sounds like such a first world problem because it is. It's a pain in the ass, unlike any other system where you just eject the disc and place a new one in. It really is cumbersome to switch games on the Switch. That's the big ask that I have for the Switch Pro. I know that's super dumb, but I would love that.
Do you want to go dumber?
Yeah, dumber.
Okay, so you know how SIM cards are held in on smartphones?
Yeah.
What if you did that? There's a back panel that pops out and they're surface mounts. So you can hold 4 or 6 of them instead of just 2.
So yeah, right now there is a an SD slot that's behind the kickstand, and kind of to your point, that is kind of janky. It because it's exposed when you kick the kickstand out, and they could add do it proper behind a cover. Yeah, and you could have more than one, like you were saying. If you're going pro, you're going pro, you know?
Because they sold all that shit for the Game Boy. I had the shoulder strap bag that you could put 20 games in. And,
hell yeah.
You know.
Yeah, that would be
nice.
nice.
Where's our Switch shoulder strap?
Do you have any wants, Jake?
Yeah, I honestly had never thought about adding the 2 cartridges. That does sound nice, but the thing I want the most is third-party Bluetooth support, so I can connect my Bluetooth headphones.
Yes.
And a microphone and all that good stuff.
Agreed.
A Bluetooth Xbox controller. I don't know, anything.
Yeah, that is actually. I forgot that you can't use Bluetooth, and that is garbage.
Yeah, it's garbage because it's there.
Yep.
It's just only for the Joy-Cons.
All right. The last thing I want to say is, if this was $300, which is the current price of the standard Nintendo Switch, would you consider selling yours and upgrading to it, knowing what we know? And Brian, let's pretend you have a Switch. I would not, because 4K is nice, but it doesn't. I don't know. It's Nintendo games, like we were saying. They don't need to be at 4K. It depends on if the AAA games really start shitting the bed, then maybe. But as it stands, I think I would stick with my current one.
I would also stick with my current one if we're assuming that we only get the 720p OLED, bigger screen, and the 4K.
Yeah.
If we got any of the wants that we added, in addition to some slightly better build quality, then I would upgrade.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know anything about this at this point, right? Because we don't know any specifics. We've not seen it. These are just they're good rumors, but they're just rumors. I mean, honestly, the Joy-Con design it's a huge problem for me. And if they fix that, I think if you're gonna own something like this, that's kind of unique, it should be able to at least do the song and dance that it does well. And I think that the control layout on the Joy-Con is one of the biggest spots where the Switch falls on its face. Not having owned one, just having interacted with them, it's pretty terrible. So if they improve something like that, and you're adding all these hardware capabilities on top of it, and I owned an original one, I would think about it. But we don't really know what this looks like at this point.
Yep.
So that's my business sense.
That's your business sense. Well, for our well-minded business folk who are listening to this right now, what should they be doing?
they should be, you know, talking about the Switch prototype, I guess, in the chat box. Yeah, what are your thoughts on this? What are some things you think might be likely? Because these are, I'm sure there's other rumors floating around out there as to what might be going. So, what do you think the next Switch revision will be? Let us know in the word box, won't you? And you know, if you watch this far in the video, you probably like it. So you might want to think about subscribing. You can do it real easy by clicking that subscribe button over there. And, you know, occasionally we give away shit. But you got to be subscribed to get it. So benefits everybody here. So go ahead and throw us a sub, won't you? And smoke them if you got them, guys. That's all for me tonight, Chris.
Thank you, Brian. We'll catch you guys next time.